Hey everyone, I've had a few people reach out to me and ask me if I could go through my bike setup. So I thought I'd do that. So right now, what I'm standing in front of is, this is my kind of my regular cross-country bike setup. It's a Specialized Epic. I got this in 2019, carbon frame. It is not the S-Works frame, but it does have some S-Works parts on it. But this is not the original paint job. This is a paint job I did after last year's attempt of the Thru-Rider. Something that people don't tell you about the Thru-Rider, don't talk about, maybe they just forget to talk about it, is how much damage might happen to your bike, your paint job. Even though I had marked off or put protective tape and stuff on my frame in certain spots, anywhere a bag would have rubbed on the bike, it took the paint off, or right down to the carbon fiber. Especially on my head badge, I'd gone right down to the carbon fiber, and I actually had to build it up a little bit again in order to get it back to ordinary. So this is not the original paint job. I did this with a sprayed up bike paints, and anyways, I kind of like the way it turned out. It turned out really well. But there are some marks on it. You can see from this year's Thru-Rider where one of my bottle cages had slipped down, or the fork cages had slipped down and took the paint off. So I do have some touch-up work to do on the bike for this year. So what I thought I would do is I would go through hardware first, and then I get into my bag setup. So for my wheel setup, I have a pair of hunt wheels. These are aluminum rims, but it has a Son Dynamo hub on it, and it has the X drive, or XD drive, I think it's called, for the SRAM. So my cassette just goes over onto that wheel. And I'm running the 2.35 Vittoria Mezcal tires, you know, kind of the default bike tire of the Thru-Rider. Last year I ran the 2.25s, I think they were. You know, all things considered, you know, I know the trend is to go to larger volume tires, but I think the 2.25s actually rolled better. So let's move around to some other parts. On this bike, I have carbon fiber seat post. I run an aluminum seat post in the Thru-Rider, and I also run an aluminum bar, and I have Urgon grips. The other thing I do is I bring my saddle from my road bike and put on the seat post, because you're spending so many hours in the saddle on the Thru-Rider that you know, I wanted a super comfortable saddle, and my road saddle is just that. It's super comfortable. Another item I had was, in order to mount an extra bottle cage, I had this little gadget from Amazon, which is a bottle cage mount, and it basically, these rubber bands wrap around your frame, and the bottle, you can mount a bottle cage here. So I had an extra bottle cage there. On the fork legs, I had a Tailfin, these Tailfin mounts. These are the stainless steel ones, and they worked well to a point. What happened was, because of the weight and the stress of the multiple days of stress that is caused by the Thru-Rider, they have actually separated. And since getting home, I was able to talk to Tailfin, and their tech support sent me brand new versions of these, but the carbon fiber versions. So that delamination that happened on me, that wouldn't happen on the new ones, because they're carbon and there is no place to delaminate from, and they're rated a little better than these ones. But you see, I had a Old Man Mountain cage on there for carrying water bottles. I would just use a volley strap it around. And then I had another bottle cage here that I originally bought to hold my bear spray, but I ended up using it to carry an extra bottle. And I carried my bear spray up on the handlebars in a food bag. So, and the next part of hardware is I have a Salsa EXP cradle. And this cradle, it mounts on your handlebars, and with that I had a dry bag attached to it. So that was my handlebar harness, was this Salsa harness, and it worked quite well this year. You do have to make sure that you have it torqued down as to the maximum that it allows, because there is a lot of, these are quite long, there is a lot of cantilever kind of force on it. So if you hit a bump, they will slip. But once I had those cinched down to the maximum torque settings, I had no issues with it afterwards. So that was great. And then I also, on my handlebars, I had a pair of TT bars. These are Specialized TT bars. And so that's where I get in a time trial position for just long efforts in the saddle. But when I was in Pinedale, Andrew, who runs the bike shop there, he didn't like the way I had my K-lights mounted on my bike, and he was right. It was kind of a bodge, for lack of a better term. So he asked if he could do something about it, and I said sure. And it looks like he took a bar end shifter and he mounted it in the end of these posts the TT bars, and that's where my K-lights were, and they were fantastic the rest of the way. They were just aimed perfectly. There was no issue with it, and I'm really appreciative of the work he did on that to get that set up. So really nice setup. And continuing on with the hardware, where are we here? I had just a RockShox fender to keep the dirt and debris out from my handlebars. And I also had a wind wing, I believe it's called, which is made by Ass Saver. So this was mounted back here on my seat stays, and that was good for just keeping the mud and debris off the bags. So that was great. And then my last piece of hardware, you may have seen click stands. This is not a click stand. I made my own version of it, and it worked well, right? It's carbon fiber tubes, everything I sourced from Amazon except for this yoke here, if you want to call it that, this U bracket, which I got at the local hardware store. But yeah, it was fun making it, but it wasn't cost effective. It basically worked out the same amount of money as if I bought it from Clickstand. And you know, I think you should support makers. So in hindsight, I wouldn't bother doing this again. It was just, sure, I had time to do it, but it wasn't the most cost-effective way. And I think somebody who came up with the idea, like the click stand, should be rewarded for their work. So do yourself a favor, and if you want something like this, buy it from Clickstand, because I just don't see how you can make it justify the cost of it when he can make it at a really good price point and accurate, and it'll fit your bike. But if you don't know how it works, basically it hooks under your top tube here, and then you can lean your bike against that so it won't fall over. So it works really well. But again, you know, support Clickstand, support a maker like him. That's his business, and they should be rewarded for their work. Okay, so let's go back to front. So for my saddlebag, I'm running an Apidura saddlebag, and it worked well. The one thing I did struggle with, though, is getting the weight balance right. If you're using a saddlebag, you really need to get the weight down here. If you have weight up at the top of your bag, it just gets exaggerated, and it moves around too much, and it makes the bag come loose. So you know, it's something you got to really work on and try to get whatever things that are heavy that you're going to carry in your saddlebag, is get it down near the seat post so that it's not, you know, having that cantilever effect out there. I think in the future I'm probably going to switch to a bike rack for the back, something like a Tailfin or an Old Man Mountain system, just to get away from having the tail bag, because if you want something quick out of it, it's not easy. It would be just nice to be able to just kind of dump stuff in the top, but always being mindful of weight. Okay, so let's continuing to move forward. This is my Apidura tool bag, and this was mounted here on my bike, and it had all my, you know, repair tools, spare tubes, pump, emergency repair kit, things like that. I have the Revelate Designs frame bag. This is, I believe, the medium size for my frame, and it fit nicely in there. And it also holds a 3-liter reservoir of water here if you want to use it. I didn't use that this year. I just used this for carrying extra food, which was a nice thing to have. And then continuing forward, I have a Rockgeist, a bento box, you want to call it that, but top tube bag. This is where I kept all my electronics, my chargers, the K-Light hub adapter was in here. It's got a really nice, easy port here to thread your cables through from the Dynamo up here, and it works really well. And it's just kind of perfect size. My knees don't hit it when I'm riding, and it's really easy to get in and out of when you're kind of rolling down the road and you want to get something quick. And then my next item is, I had 2 of these mounted, one on each side. These are Decathlon water bottle bags. So I had those mounted in here on the front of the bike. And one I used for water, the other side I put my bear spray in it until I got to Pinedale. And then when I got to Pinedale, I used it for extra food and to hold on to garbage and stuff like that. And then my next bag, this is a Swift Industries bag, and what's in here is my drone. It's kind of the perfect size for a drone. I have a DJI Mini Pro 4, and what was nice about it is I could get my remote control and the drone in here. But what I would do is I mounted it vertically here, beside the other bag with the bear spray. And the reason for that is to protect the drone if I crashed. It also made it really easy and accessible to get the drone out. But my bike has a stopper on it to stop the handlebars from swinging around. So if the handlebars did come around, the drone was still protected from getting crushed against the frame, but it was also protected from a crash if you fell forward or such. But this bag is actually designed to go off, like to hang off the front of a handlebar bag. But I mounted it vertically and it worked really well. The guys at Dismount has suggested that this size might work, and they were absolutely right. Dismount's a bike shop here in Toronto. And then finally I had was the second dry bag I had, but this went into the cradle, my Salsa cradle, and on the front of the bike. And this was my entire sleep system. So it had my tent, my sleeping pad, and my sleeping bag and pillow all in this bag. And it was right at the weight limit for what this is rated for, and it worked nicely. So anyways, that's my my mountain bike setup that I used on the Tour Divide, but I've also used it for bike packing here in Ontario, and it's a great setup. Shorter days I don't bother shorter rides I don't bother putting the Dynamo on. I just use battery banks and so on. But it's a nice setup and it works quite well. So anyways, I'm going to do another video. I'm going to go over what bags I use on my gravel bike and the setup I have with that. So until next time, keep the rubber side down.